Good morning, everybody, on this bright morning at RUSI, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all. I've been to quite a number of PONI conferences in my time, and it's always one of the highlights of my year to have such a great event. So just to get us started, I wonder whether people could raise their hands if this is their first PONI conference. Right, okay, so maybe more than half of you, it's your first PONI conference, which is great to hear. How many of you are currently working in some aspect of the nuclear industry? Okay, how many of you are from government? And how many of you are from academia or think tank or students? Okay, so quite a good mixture of experiences. So how many of you did a first degree in engineering or science or mathematics? Okay. How many of you did a first degree in humanities or social science or economics? Okay. Good balance, I think. How many of you remember the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989? You all look too young. You know, the challenges which the nuclear community in this country and other countries face today are in some respects comparable to the challenges people faced in 1988 or 89 with the tumultuous events that happened then, the challenges that we faced after the 9/11 attacks, challenges in some respects we faced in the late 1940s. We didn't know what was going to happen next, but we did know it was important. And with Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine just a couple of years ago, with the events we're now seeing in the Middle East today, with the concerns about Chinese military activity, we are at a moment which may well be a turning point, but turning points in history are great to identify in retrospect. When you're in them, you don't know where they're going to end up. And for governments, for industries, for all the people represented here, it's really important to preserve an open mind, to think about the uncertainty of events, the uncertainty of what's going to happen next, and to ensure as best we can that our societies and our governments are as best prepared for those events as possible. And I think we are in a period where nuclear weapons, unfortunately, are more relevant than they have been since the days of the Cold War. We don't just need to resuscitate those lessons from the few of us who can remember the 1980s, but we do need to be aware of those historical lessons, and we do need to think about how to apply them in very different circumstances. And that's why one of the things I really like about PONI is we bring together people of many generations with many different disciplines, because no single academic discipline, no single background can allow us to tackle those problems as well as we might. So those of you with humanities backgrounds can learn from the scientists and vice versa. One of the problems in our country, I think sometimes that division is too great, but here I think we're representing bringing together that fusion of different backgrounds. So make sure you talk to people with different backgrounds, with different current experiences, because I think you can learn from each other. And we'll see that, I think, throughout the day with a series of really great presentations from emerging experts on European nuclear deterrence in the first session, on safety, security and innovation in civil nuclear energy in the second, the third, emerging technologies and impact on deterrence and arms control, and finally enhancing UK nuclear skills, which is a common problem against the defence and civil sector. So it's a really great, but also a jam-packed programs, and in between that we're going to have a series of fantastic keynote speakers. The panel presentations and the keynote addresses are all on the record, which doesn't mean, I don't think we've got any journalists here, so people aren't going to be reporting in the newspapers, but you are free to report what's said in the on-record presentations on social media, if that is your thing. But the Q&A of all the sessions, the panels and the keynote addresses will be off the record, so you should not report any of that elsewhere. We're running an academic poster competition featuring some of this year's applicants. Fortunately, we had an abundance of really fantastic proposals to make presentations to the conference, and we couldn't fit them all into a one-day program. So we've got some really excellent other presentations which you'll see upstairs in the library, and I really would encourage you to go and look at them. There's some really great ideas there. It's not simply a place for coffee and chat, it's also an opportunity to chat to those poster presenters, and they'll be ready to answer your question. And we'll be announcing some awards at the end in relation to the poster conference in honour of John Gower, who died earlier this year and was a great friend of PONI. There are no fire alarms drills planned for today, so if the alarm rings, it's either real or a technological glitch, probably the former, and RUSI staff will lead you out the building. So if you see a RUSI member of staff running for the door, then follow them. And finally, can I really thank all the RUSI staff who've been involved in organising this event for several months. It's been a fantastic achievement getting us all in this room together. Can I thank all the panellists for their work, and the chairs and the keynote speakers, and not least, can I thank our sponsors who are all up on the slide, and without their financial support and their support for many years in most cases, this would not be possible. We're now going to move on to the first keynote address of the day, and for that I'm delighted to welcome Josef Pitt-Rashid, who's the Strategy and Policy Director at the Defence Nuclear Organisation in the Ministry of Defence. He's got an impressively wide portfolio advising the MOD and indeed the wider UK government on nuclear deterrence policy, nuclear operations planning and various other issues. And he's going to make some introductory remarks. I may well ask him one or two questions, and hopefully we're going to have a bit of time to throw it open to questions from the floor. So as he's speaking, think about questions you might want to ask, because the first people that put up their hands are more likely to be called than those who only think of their question too late. Josef, over to you.
Thanks very much, Malcolm, for that introduction. And as a representative of the Ministry of Defence, which has been a long-term supporter of PONI, it's fantastic to be here and see the energy that is carrying this project forward in the years ahead. As Malcolm alluded to, my day job involves advising the government on our international and domestic policy, our operational planning and analysis, and the strategy for the set of organisations that deliver our nuclear deterrent, primarily the Defence Nuclear Organisation, AWE, the SDA, and the Royal Navy, and collectively we call that the Defence Nuclear Enterprise, the DNE. But I think my job here today is to offer everyone some encouragement. And I'm going to do that by making an admission that I only started working on nuclear policy less than a year ago. Now that might horrify you about the state of the civil service, and it scares me too. But there are two key things I want you to take away from that. The first is that the barriers to entry on getting involved in nuclear policy in the UK are much lower than you might think, and you are definitely qualified to contribute. And secondly, I really, really need your help. So I'll say a bit about what I'm asking you to help with. And I won't go into great detail here because I'm sure you've all read the Defence Nuclear Enterprise command paper published earlier this year, cover to cover. And after this speech, you can tell me that it was worth all my late nights checking for spelling errors. But just to press you some of the key messages in there, look, the core thing we are trying to do is to protect the UK and our NATO allies from the most extreme acts of aggression and coercion. We're confronted by Russian aggression in Europe, taking place under a nuclear umbrella, an expanding Chinese nuclear capability and the increasingly destabilizing actions of North Korea and Iran. Confronted with that, we're trying to make sure the UK has the right policy and the right capability for the challenges we face today, tomorrow, and in the decades ahead. Now, the new government has made a clear commitment to the nuclear deterrent as the cornerstone of our national security, and we're undertaking a strategic defence review that will assess the most efficient and effective way to deliver deterrence in the decades ahead. Just to explain the things that stay the same in that process, we're continuing with our core programs, we're building new submarines, we're replacing our warhead, we're investing in the extensive infrastructure necessary to deliver those programs, and we're managing the disposal of our old submarines. And we're working very closely with our allies across all of NATO, but especially with the US, France, and Australia. Now, the programs that we're delivering are some of the most complex and technologically advanced and expensive that have ever been attempted in the UK. And we often talk about delivering the Manhattan Project and the Apollo space program at the same time. Delivering that is a national endeavour. It depends upon the contributions of tens of thousands of people right across the UK and further afield, from nuclear physicists to welders to project managers to Royal Navy submariners and many, many more. And the people collected in this room are part of that team. To support that national endeavour, we're going further than we've ever gone before to invest in science, the skills and the communities that support the work that we do. And we're also investing in the next generation of thinkers. So what do I want from that investment that we're making? What kind of value for money am I looking from the investment? Well, just as we're renewing and modernising all our nuclear capabilities, we need to renew and modernise our nuclear thinking for the new nuclear age. We don't have the same kind of interchange inside and outside of government that the US system has, and we have a very different relationship to our legislature than the US has with Congress. So we really rely on communities like this to bring diversity and challenge and fresh perspectives to our nuclear policy. So there are four things I want to encourage people who are starting out on that journey as nuclear thinkers to think about. The first thing is, do not be inhibited. Yes, you should understand the intellectual frameworks that guided us through the Cold War and that have been developed since then, but you should not be inhibited by them. We can afford to invest in new submarines and we can afford to hear new ideas. The second thing is, I would really encourage you to collaborate, firstly with each other, but also with other disciplines, and it's fantastic to see a range of different disciplines represented in the room today, and also to collaborate with our allies. We deliver deterrence as part of NATO, and the allied perspective is critically important. And on thinking about other disciplines, many of the problems that we struggle with just over the road are at the intersection of geopolitics, technology, and industrial economics. And I would really encourage you to think about how perspectives from different disciplines can illuminate the problems that we face today. The third thing I'd say is to think not only about the space that you can make for yourself, but the space that you can create for others. There is a lot of space out there, and we can afford to start some new settlements, and I hope that some of the people in this room will lead the charge on that endeavour. And finally, in the way you look at government, think of it not only as a subject that you can study and analyse, and we want to help you to study and analyse it, but also as something that you can shape and that you can participate in. I hope that some of the people in this room that don't currently work with us inside government will get that opportunity in the years ahead. So to repeat something I said earlier, you are part of the team, and this is a national endeavour. Thank you very much.